Good afternoon, everybody. This is Spencer Michaud at the Great Lakes Astrology Conference 2019, and I am here with Gemini Brett, one of my favorite astrologers, a storyteller, if you will. Welcome, buddy.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Spencer.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So you have just participated in a panel discussion. You are doing a few talks, and you are doing a full daily, what is it? You have a workshop?
It's a full day conference workshop.
Full day conference workshop. Sorry, I was tripping over my words there. So sorry. So tell me a little bit about what you do. Where are you from, first of all?
I recently relocated from Seattle, Washington to the Bay Area, mostly in Berkeley, California now.
Very cool. And so you are very into sacred geometry.
I am. Yeah, the quadrivium in general, which is kind of the ancient mystery school path, like in a way prerequisites of astrology, which are number magic.
Perfect.
So number itself, number in space is sacred geometry, number in time, musical harmony.
Yeah.
We're both musicians. And number in space and time, which is astronomy. And in a way, that's kind of what I'm most known for, is being a sky guy, being like a feet on the ground, sky-based astrologer.
I remember a story that I saw a video of you where when you train your students, you have a unique way of training them with circles. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, yeah, so we work through geometry and harmony and astronomy, and the prerequisite for the study is draw 108 circles for the compass, right?
Perfect.
So students show up and, you know, why is my boyfriend a psycho? And I'm like, draw circles, right?
It's a meditation.
108 circles, right? And come back in. Yeah, the hope is that they will have the breakthrough of hearing the circle speak to them, because we learn circle, square, triangle, all these things at once. We learn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all at once. And the circle really is the image, at least in 2 dimensions, of the perfect form of the all, of the one thing. Yeah. Right. So and I see it in their eyes. People come back in and they have that sparkle, or it might take a couple more sessions and this breakthrough. And another thing is, it's just like, hey, our study is going to be a little bit strange. Like there's going to be some wax on, wax off, which is a circle thing.
Mr. Miyagi.
So yeah, just go for it. And I promise you, in the end, you will know why your boyfriend has been acting psychotic and how to alleviate that aversion.
You know, I love that, because it's helping to connect with the center. You know, and this is one of the things I like to talk about with astrology, is like we see the spinnings of the planets, but really when we can connect to the center of the wheel, we're getting outside of those ups and downs in the wheel of fortune, so to speak. So I love that.
Absolutely. And the center of the wheel is the earth, and specifically the center of the earth, where we are all connected, right? So that circle consciousness or spherical consciousness is so imperative, and it's smooth and curvy and, irrational. Like you cannot really find the true circumference or area of a circle, right? So astrology can be very linear and rule-based, and that's a beautiful thing, but we are lines and curves. So starting with the curve and then seeing the marriage or the relationship of the two. So we're not only working astrologically based on some system of rules and not living in our connection, which is really what we're getting after, and why people come to sit with us at very crucial times in their lives, right? So, I mean, one of my main mantras is heart before chart.
Perfect. Love it. Love it. So tell me a little bit about your talks this weekend. How are you enjoying the beautiful Ann Arbor, Michigan so far?
It's cool. Anna and I got in yesterday, and we had some time to walk around in the heat and explore downtown. And I've been here to play music years ago, but it's been a long time.
The Blind Pig.
Yeah, the Blind Pig.
The good old
Ann
Blind
Arbor.
Pig.
And really, it was upstate Michigan and Wisconsin where I first saw the Milky Way in the sky. So there's a little bit of a homecoming in that regard.
There's a dark sky park not too far from here too. So.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get there. Clouds are supposed to come in. We'll see. But last night it was nice. We got to work with some planets and some stars, and yeah, it's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to be invited. I love learning so much, and I love the opportunity to teach and speak, and to do a workshop is so wonderful too, because we get exposed to so many astrologers, and I'm really excited to present tomorrow in a short time, and then on Monday to be able to open it up for many hours. We're going to play fun like psychic games, and then do a lot of like chart play too.
So tell me a little bit about your topics. You got some really interesting things that we're working through this weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of subtly plugged it earlier. The topic is alleviating aversions.
Right.
But I changed the title because I found that wasn't attractive for people to unlocking your hidden superpowers.
Nice.
But that's my general feeling. It's kind of a modern view of traditional aspect theory, which wasn't, as you know, based so much on planet to planet. It was more the aspects between the signs.
Right.
And if planets reside in signs that can see one another, they're linked up, where if they reside in signs that cannot see one another, they're in aversion.
Right.
And it's interesting because it's kind of like hidden pain points in the chart that actually might never really be seen by us, right? So like the squares and the oppositions tend to be tense things, but they're in your face, or they're coming to hit you like a car from the side. And we can, of course, like alleviate that and bring beauty to any aspect in our chart that can speak in a million ways. But I'm really interested in these things like the quincunx things, which are a little more alien. It's like there's a disagreement happening, but you don't know it's a disagreement, which is way worse, right? And so tuning into those things, and I'm not talking about just disagreements with other people outside of us, right? Our chart is not a way out, it's a way in. So looking at these parts of ourselves that in even a hidden way, or ways that we don't know, are kind of just their wishes are in a way conflict with one another. So finding agreements between these two things that might stretch us in uncomfortable ways, so that they help us stretch to greater comfort.
Well, let's give an example, because you and I, you laid some knowledge and wisdom on me last night. Like I was saying, okay, I've got a moon in, there's an example, a moon in Taurus in the 10th house, and its host, because there's a guest-host relationship between the planets, is in Gemini and the sign next to it. So the aversions are the signs on either side, right? And on the opposition, the other side
of the opposition.
That's right.
Yeah.
So there's a lack of communication between the moon and its host, Venus.
Yeah. First of all, let me say I love that you use this word host.
Yeah.
I like guide. Host is a little bit more appropriate to the ancient vernacular, but usually we hear ruler, and that just can feel very ruler line, right? So a curvier way would be that host. So let me like actually rewind and get into like a mutual reception. Right. So say, Venus is in Gemini and Mercury is in Libra. Right. So here are two signs that can see one another. The aspect, which means to see, is a trine. It's said to be the most benefic aspect. This, first of all, is impossible to have Mercury and Venus trine, but that's a story for another time. But say it's happening, you could like make that happen in a composite chart somehow, maybe. Probably not. But anyway, that kind of idea of mutual reception is like a foreign exchange program. Right. Mercury's living in Venus's realm. He doesn't necessarily understand it, but he's down to learn. And the phone line is open. Right. And she's in this foreign exchange program. And it's like, hey, these are the cool places to eat. Never go there after 9:30 p.m. Right. Don't pay this much for that thing, whatever. These are cool phrases that you need to know. But a situation where you're talking about, which was the Taurus moon and Venus in Gemini. Right. The neighboring signs you'll find are the ones that are least alike. Right. We kind of think of that as a opposition, or that idea of polarity, but truly the poles, the opposite signs, are two sides of one thing. So my favorite example is Libra and Aries. You put them together, it spells libraries. This is the book of relationship. Libra othership needs to be balanced with Aries selfness to meet in the middle way of right relating. The neighboring signs are those ones that are totally most unalike. It's as if the sign that comes is in reaction or response to the preceding sign, so it doesn't take us too far out of the middle.
Well, and they don't have anything in common. Elementally, triplicity, you know, like
no sharing in modality. Right? No sharing in polarity, and no sharing in element. So polarity, triplicity, quadruplicity. And so that's the main thing that's typically taught about them. But my favorite example, I mean, if you look at this screen, right, like how many fingers am I holding up? 2, but you can only tell because you're looking at that screen. Right. If I do this and you're sitting next to me, we'll do some games like this in the workshop, you might have said 2, right? But that's not because you saw it, or not with your eyes. You felt that. And so there's actually this psychic energetic in these hidden places. That's what I'm very interested in. In fact, when we connect the 4 signs that one sign can't see, so for Aries, that would be Pisces and Taurus, the neighbors, and then Scorpio and Virgo, the neighbors of the opposite sign, Libra, they form what's called the mystic rectangle. And I find that that mystic rectangle, it's really in kind of a Neptunian or like psychic way, tuning in or like opening the experience or the expression for the Aries Libra axis. And there needs to be this, in a way, hidden relationship and this polarity flip and modality and element experience where there's nothing shared, because like Pisces, which does have that circle consciousness, inherently wants us to return to oneness. If we only do that, well, we don't do a human life. And so Aries must react to that and focus on, rather than the one the, which is the radius of the circle, of which there are infinite amounts, and we are each a radii of the one circle, you know. So that idea of having a Taurus moon in conjunct to Venus and Gemini, you want to find one of the ways that I work with it, I call it magic mirrors, or really magic squares, because it depends on the square aspect.
We were talking about my Virgo planets. I have 3 Virgo planets being kind of like intermediaries, right?
Yes, and Saturn was the one that was most tightly aligned by orb. So Saturn in Virgo for Spencer is trine with receiving the trine ray from the Taurus moon, and then square, receiving the square ray from Venus and Gemini. And it's always the squares that can connect to beings like this. I should say traditionally, and I'll be talking about this, there are traditional ways that naturally alleviate the aversions, and they're like Engirding, or planets that are hosted, or signs that are hosted by the same planet.
Yeah, let's define like Engirding. That's because we got 2 planets, right, that are ruling or hosting the same, well, 2 signs that are being hosted by the same planet.
Right? Yeah, Robert Hand told me it was called like Engirding because back in the chariot race days, the charioteer of the Taurus and the Libra chariots would both wear the Venus sash, the Venus girdle, so they were literally like Engirding. Right, so if planets are ruled by, signs are ruled by the same planet, even if they are in conjunct relationship to one another. So an example would be Taurus and Libra, Venus's signs. They're in conjunct because they're quincunx, but they are both Venusian, and so there's some alleviation. There's also alleviation for signs that are Antiscia, which is a reflection about the solstice degrees, or contra Antiscia, a reflection about the equinox degrees.
A hidden conjunction or opposition, sort of.
Yeah, and they can come even more into form through parallel and contra-parallel, which I'll be getting into. And then the translation of light, which is one of the most beautiful kind of ancient paradigms, I would say, more than anything, is another way that most often it's the moon who can alleviate aversions astrologically through translating light. But the thing that I'm bringing that I haven't read yet is, and I'm sure it's out there somewhere, is this idea of the square aspect, which I think of as a magic square or a magic mirror. Because like in our car where we have blind spots, what we do to alleviate that is have side mirrors, right? So in your example, while the Taurus moon and her host Venus and Gemini might be in conjunct, Saturn is seen by both of them, right? And it will always happen that if there's a planet that can see 2 that are otherwise in conjunct, that planet will be square to one of them, and either trine the other or sextile the other, right? And so you have a so-called hard aspect, which I prefer to call activating, and a so-called easy aspect, which I prefer to call flowing, right? So the Venus-Saturn square in this example is where the action is, right? And, you know, here's this moon in Taurus looking at Virgo Saturn, and they're having this conversation that agrees by the earth element, and they're getting down, you know, and the moon's looking at Saturn, and she's just like, hey man, what's the issue? Like you seem like even colder than Saturn. like what's going on?
I love the conversation aspect of it, because as I study ancient astrology, they really thought of it as a cosmic courtroom where they're, providing witness and testimony between the planets. And, it seems to me what you're saying is that when we have two people in the courtroom who are just not connecting, you have an intermediary that they're bouncing off of and kind of almost like translating and saying, it's almost like you lost touch with a friend. And then you have this other friend that was a third wheel at some point that you're like, hey, how is this person doing? And like, oh, I don't know. I don't want to reach out directly. But then you've got this other friend that's kind of like your connector. And they're like, hey, this person really wants to talk to you, but they're shy and they really, they feel like there's been weird bad blood. Maybe we can, maybe I can help.
Right. Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. First of all, we want to bring our astrology into human experience.
Right.
And so we've had conversations and we've had uncomfortable things and
Right.
we've had misunderstandings about this thing that I said really annoyed this person. I would have never said it had I known,
Right.
etc. But we often require a third person to kind of
party.
mediate those difficulties, right?
A mediator.
And,
I like that.
well, the moon, according to the lines or the rules, is like quite happy to be in Taurus. Regardless, she might be looking around to Venus to understand how the bathtub thing works, right? Or where the bubble bath stuff is. And so she's looking at Saturn and it's like, hey, why are you down? And it's never mind.
Yeah.
Right? Because the reason why he's down is the square with Venus is a tricky thing.
Yeah.
Now that can show up in all sorts of different ways. Gemini Venus, who might want to stay open and a free electron and flirtatious and such, and Saturn and Virgo, who might be wanting to pay more attention to like the structures of the particulars, like, hey, why, Spencer, aren't you married yet, etc. And that could
get me in trouble here. You're gonna get me in trouble, Brett.
That could be a heavy conversation. Oh, I thought I was just making that up.
No.
That could be like a heavy conversation, and Saturn doesn't want to talk to the moon about it. But finally, when Venus and Saturn sort their thing out, like, hey, we do have structure, and it's structure that actually allows for this play, and that square gets softened, right? It's still a square, but squares totally activate our lives. We want squares, right? And so one day, Moon's looking at Saturn and says, wow, you seem like you've had this crazy lead lifted off your shoulders, And Saturn says, yeah, you know how you're always asking me what the issue is? I have had the hardest relationship with this being Venus. And Moon's like, what's her name? Venus. Like, I swear I've seen that name before. And Saturn starts describing her and how things got better. Like, Moon's like, oh my God, like, I live in her house.
Right.
And Saturn says, oh, well, I better introduce you. And suddenly there's a phone line open. It just required this operator, or as Caroline Casey says, co-operators are standing by, right? So Saturn and your other Virgo planets are like cool key rear side view mirrors or magic mirrors, but we have to deal with the square to open in that trine the ability for the ease to alleviate this aversion, then opens gifts of superpowers. Because think about you as a musician, right? In that Taurus moon is going to help people really feel in their body and dance and move. And that Gemini Venus is going to be pulling so many beautiful ideas to communicate. And sometimes that can be a very difficult thing that can really conflict. Sometimes we want to pull in all these ideas and there's no chill because of it, right? But the superpower is to be able to bring the many in such a way that it brings people such beautiful ease. And working out that Venus-Saturn square. And another way that can certainly show up for the artist is confidentiality issues, really being hard on ourselves, not getting the sound, playing the notes right. And that certainly doesn't like assist the moon in that beautiful moon-Saturn trine.
The technical challenges of performing, which I faced a little bit of that this morning with Mercury in her shadow and slowing down and everything. But we got through it. And eventually the flow space started to happen. So,
and your talk was great. Speaking of my experience at the conference, learned a lot. Spencer shared first PowerPoint presentation.
My first PowerPoint.
Felt like your 1,000th.
Nice.
And it was wonderful. It was amazing. And that's the thing with our hitches as well. People don't notice them. Right. Sometimes we'll speak them and suddenly now magically they're in the room, and that can actually help the alleviation as well. Right. Because we want to work in community. But it's an amazing thing how other people sometimes can reflect to us the issues that we have internally that we don't see, or sometimes they are not doing this, but just because there are ears for us to share our tensions with, alleviation happens in the expression.
You got it. You got it. Well, fantastic. That was an amazing preview of this workshop that you're going to be doing in your talk. Thanks for dropping the knowledge on us, man.
I'll say the other thing about this workshop, and it probably will be downloadable later, is it is literally the visually most pleasing thing I've ever created, with so many animations. I'm putting so much work into it.
I've loved your videos in the past with like all the different geometric shapes that you've got going on. It's so beautiful seeing all the colors and shapes kind of, you know, aligning themselves. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, this one I'm just like, I'm learning so many new things to make stuff move and open the heart, because we know pictures tell 1,000 words. Absolutely. And I have Mercury in Virgo and Venus in Libra. Nice. No, I don't. I have Venus in Virgo and Mercury in Libra. And so some say that's a mutual reception because they live in each other's zones, but some say it's mutual deception. There's no reception because they can't see one another because they're in neighboring signs. Though I should say those signs are contra Antiscia. But the magic square for me is Neptune and Sagittarius.
There you go.
Right? Venus, Virgo, squaring Sagittarius, Neptune, and then Libra, Mercury, sextile. And so it's a lot of times that kind of dream vision in the art, the music, the images that have helped kind of me find a superpower of this Virgo Venus, who's very particular about the look of a thing sometimes, and this Libra Mercury, who wants to convey information so that everybody can hear it. So when they're in conflict, and they often are, it can be really difficult for me.
So you found what your intermediary is, where you can rely on when you feel yourself being pulled towards these maybe self-destructive tendencies, right?
Yeah. And then Neptune with Venus at the square and at my descendant, a lot of that's shown up for me personally in relationships. And as we know in human life, that can often be the venue where we are developing personally, and that those developments then can be shared with a greater group. And so I'm really excited to do that here at GLAC.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a fantastic presentation. So, Brett, where can we find you?
GeminiBrett.com. It's like a new website just launched and needs some work, but a lot of gratitude to my beloved Anna Zaharia for helping that ship launch. Brett is spelled with 2 T's, so GeminiBrett.com, and you can find events there. Like this one, you're a little late to get to GLAC, but I'll be speaking in Athens, Greece in early September, and then in Turkey. I haven't quite announced it yet, but we'll do that here. In October, around my solar return, we're going to go down to Mexico and do a astro music workshop with my friend who's a brilliant piano player, and really learning how our charts can be played on the piano.
The music of the spheres.
Indeed. And in this case, kind of the music of the rays or the aspects. And then we'll go down to San Miguel de Allende for an amazing pyramid site, the Cañada de la Virgen, which is kind of recently discovered, a powerful site. And then this church in town, which was based on one of the great churches in Spain, is this amazing solar calendar. So we'll be taking people to kind of old sites that are both aligned heavenly and speaking about temple building and calendar creation. And then kind of the main event for that trip is to go see Uranus in space with our face.
Whoa.
Because a lot of us don't teach this, but Uranus is actually visible once a year for about 3 days a year, depending on how close the moon is. And this year, the Scorpio full moon is opposite Uranus. Whoa. So in the middle of the night, Uranus will be shining bright, which doesn't mean too bright for Uranus, but definitely bright enough to see with the naked eye. And that's a very important thing that tells us mysteries about what Uranus is. Not as blind as we think. So we're also going to be around a cat who has gigantic telescopes. So we'll do the eyeball scopes, which is kind of my way to play, and then we'll look through the lenses too to see some things way out there.
Perfect. That sounds fantastic. All right. Well, hey, thank you. This has been Gemini Brett. Thanks a lot, man, for joining me. That was amazing. All right.
I'm really excited always to spend some time with you. I appreciate sharing.
It's been wonderful. We're creating community, and I'm really, really happy that you're here. So thank you again, and we'll all see you next time. All right?
See you in space.
All right. Take care.